Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I hear your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I hear your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
Good morning. My name is Pate Randall, and I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church. Thank you for joining us today. Next Sunday, weather permitting, we will gather for an in-person outside Sunday service at 11 a.m. The service will also be live streamed. We will continue to offer in-person outdoor services on the first and third Sundays of March, April, and May. That's March 21st, next Sunday, April 4th and 18th, May the 2nd and the 16th. All services will also be live streamed. If weather is inclement, we will live stream only, and we'll follow all public health protocols to keep everyone safe. So please bring a chair, wear a mask, and social distance. This is a wonderful way to celebrate the arrival of spring. Thank you to everyone who has worked so hard to make this possible. Allow me to share a few announcements in the life of our church. We enjoyed a moving presentation on the history of the South Side 2 Sundays ago by the Honorable Brenda Lee Price. And in her presentation, she mentioned the sale of calendars representing this history to benefit the South Side Heritage and Preservation Committee. Our own Ruth Stanton will have these available for sale when we gather in person next Sunday, and the cost is $25. Please buy one to support the vital work of preserving the rich history of the neighborhood of which we are privileged to be a part. This afternoon, March 14th, from 3 to 5, and again on Tuesday, March 16th, from 10 a.m. to noon, we will hold another social justice quintuple dip. Drive through, drop off, and pick up in the UCS parking lot. We're collecting donations of feminine hygiene items for the Spartanburg Period Project, which will be given to a variety of local organizations serving women and girls in need. We're also collecting gently used children's books for the 3 little free libraries that we are supporting, as well as our regulars, food for Total Ministries and newspapers for Animal Allies. Buy a South Side of a Spartanburg calendar and or get your free St. Patrick's Day face mask at UUCS. On Sunday only, we will host a litter sweep for the South Carolina Aquarium Project. Your participation and contributions are greatly appreciated. And the weather's going to be great, so don't miss it. Coming this month, we will share a workshop entitled Don't Fear the Reaper, an exploration of modern death. Presented by Gary Snipes and Lisa Mowry, this presentation will provide clear and simple recommendations to realize a good death when our time has come, and to be able to support others in their dying process. An opportunity for dialogue will be an important part of this course so that we can all learn from each other. This 5-part workshop will take place Wednesdays from 12 to 1:15 p.m. via Zoom beginning March 17th through April 21st. Our annual UUCS auction will be held Sunday, April 18th. Outdoors on the UUCS back lawn right after the in-person outside morning service. So mark your calendars and see the happenings for more details. What an amazing congregation this is. Especially in times like this, we need to stay connected. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you for being a part of this congregation today. This month, we are speaking about the divine feminine. Last week, we worked with the Judeo-Christian tradition, and we saw that there are three forms of the divine feminine that emerge at the very beginning of that tradition. Ruah, the spirit of the divine, a feminine noun in Hebrew that moves over the darkness at the dawn of creation in that creation story. And Chokmah in Hebrew, or Sophia in Greek, the wisdom of the divine that is present at creation and comes to us to guide us and to teach us how to live, to show us what the divine is like. And the Shekinah, a third feminine Hebrew noun, the glory of the divine. At the end of last week's service, we heard a song sung by Aaron in which the Indigo Girls take that image of the Shekinah, the glory of the divine, and they completely transform a story from the biblical tradition that isolates and excludes and does violence to people who are understood as being on the outside, impure, cast out. The song takes that story and it completely reverses it and finds within it the glory of the divine, that Shekinah. They do this not based out of a scriptural tradition and in contradiction to religious authority, because they find it in themselves. That glory first found in themselves just as they are, the original blessing of their lives, informing their understanding of spirituality, informing their understanding of authority. And so they sing a song that literally transforms the violence done to exclude and to harm, claiming the divine feminine in themselves for the transformation of our world. Our video feed last Sunday stopped short, was cut short by a power outage. Those who were here heard Aaron sing the song, but those of you who were joining us virtually, who are as much a part of this congregation as the folks who were here present, you weren't able to hear her sing. So in just a moment after we light our chalice, Aaron is going to offer that song for us again so that we can all hear it. We can hear the transformative power, not just of an idea or of a theology or of a religious tradition, but of finding in the original blessing of our lives from the pure nature of our own existence, whoever we are. The glory of the divine. Whether we believe in it or not isn't the point. We live that glory, that original blessing within us to transform the violence of the world. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. From the literary giant and leading abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who reshaped the 19th century's understanding of the intersection of patriarchy, enslavement, and racism, speaking at the International Council of Women in the fight for women's suffrage. All good causes are mutually helpful. The benefits accruing from this movement for the equal rights of women are not confined or limited to women only. They will be shared by every effort to promote the progress and welfare of humankind everywhere and in all ages. It was an example and a prophecy of what can be accomplished against strongly opposing forces, against time-hallowed abuses, against deeply entrenched error, against worldwide usage, and against the settled judgment of mankind, by a few earnest women, clad only in the panoply of truth and determined to live and die in what they considered a righteous cause. And from the poet, philosopher, and activist Audre Lorde, who reshaped the 20th century's understanding of feminism, womanism, intersectional oppression, and the hope for our mutual liberation. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us to temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. Racism and homophobia are real conditions in our lives, in this place and time. I urge each one of us here to reach down into that deep place of knowledge inside herself and touch that terror and loathing of any difference that lives here. See whose face it wears. Then the personal as the political can begin to illuminate our choices.
I come to you with strange fire. I'm making offering of love. The incense of my soul is burned by the fire in my blood. I come with a softer answer to the questions that lie in your path. I want to harbor you from the anger, find a refuge from the wrath. This is a message of love, love that moves from the inside out, love that never grows tired. I come to you with strange fire. Mercenaries of the shrine, now who are you to speak for God? With haughty eyes and lying tongues, and hands that shed innocent blood. Now who delivered you the power to interpret Calvary? You gamble away our freedom to gain your own authority. Find another state of mind. You know it's time we all learn to grab hold. Strange fire burns with emotion of love. When you learn to love yourself, you will dissolve all the stones that are cast. Now you will learn to burn the icing sky, to melt the waxen mask. I said to have the gift of true release. There's a peace that will take you higher. Oh, I come to you with my offering. I bring you strange fire. This is a message of love, love that moves from the inside out, love that never grows tired. I come to you with a strange fire, fire, fire,
Our church has a covenant crafted by this congregation about how we want to be together. If you need these words, they can be found in the order of service below this live stream. For me, these sacred words call me to actions that I could not take alone. They call me to live in ways that cause me to be vulnerable. And they remind me that I am not alone, that I am enough, and that the work we do together and individually does matter. It filled me with deep, deep joy to say these words aloud, outside, with those in my tribe who could make it last week. While we are not together in this room today, we remain together still in a holy space of faith and hope. Please join your voice with mine as we say our covenant. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with a power of a love beyond belief. I am delighted to be with you today on a day that I anticipate for many months, a day artificially made to alter time. I look forward to this day because for me, the stretching of the light into the evening truly matters. I am also grateful for this community of thinkers and explorers, the kind of place where we can spend a month celebrating the divine feminine. The goddess with whom I share my skin is the Hindu goddess Durga. She came to me at a time of loss, a time when I thought something had been taken from me, that I was no longer whole. Durga is a warrior goddess, fighting injustice and offering immediate grace and transformation. Her power came largely because she was not seen in her female form, not recognized for who she was or who she could be, until it was too late for the men then in power to do anything but be consumed by the overwhelming force of her grace. She reminds me both of who I am and who I can continue to become. At this time in our service, we honor the circle of care created by community. We know that the sharing of joys lifts us all, just as the sharing of sorrows holds us in protection. In this moment, offer your joys, your dreams, your pain, your worry, the quiet voice in your heart to this community. Allow the power of this community to transform them with its own deep divine grace. We are that force in the world for those that we hold in care. And it is my great pleasure to give you my dear friend, Mary Miles, to speak with you about our Share the Plate opportunity.
Thank you, Mel. And good morning, everyone. I am here to talk to you a little bit about the International Women's Convocation that I've spoken to you about several times before. But I'd like to open with the words of Juliana, who is a Unitarian woman taking part in a violence awareness training organized in Budapest last February by the International Women's Convocation, the IWC. Quote, "The seminar gave me a clear picture of the current situation of abused women in Hungary, which is a far-reaching and complex societal issue. It provided useful strategies for offering help to those who are living with hidden or invisible abuse. This will allow us to better support these women and girls with counseling and practical information, working in collaboration with our church leaders and experts." Unquote. Violence awareness and prevention programs are just one of the ways the IWC advances the rights of women and girls and children around the globe. March is Women's History Month, and a time when we recognize the UN-designated International Women's Day. Our congregation is once again sharing the plate with IWC, a nonprofit partnership of Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist women that collaborates with Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist women's groups, other grassroots partnerships of UU women, and community-based organizations and NGOs to implement leadership development, empowerment, and awareness programs on the local level. IWC has programs and projects in Romania, Hungary, India, the Philippines, Bolivia, Uganda, Kenya, and the United States. It has gained consultative status with the UN's Economic and Social Council, which is allowing it to work even more broadly and effectively on the world stage. For more information, please click on the link that's included in your order of service, or feel free to contact me. UUCS has committed our financial support to many organizations and programs focused on human rights and equity on the local, state, and national levels. This is an opportunity for us to support a Unitarian Universalist organization working to advance our Unitarian Universalist values globally. Let us share the plate today with the IWC as generously as we are able. Go to the UUCS webpage, click on Donate, and select Share the Plate donation. And thank you so much.
At the beginning of the service, we heard the voice of a 19th century activist and leader in thinking about the intersection of and then we heard the voice of a 20th century activist and leader in thought who pushed that thinking even further, asking us to examine within ourselves the place where oppression lies. Through the transformation of ourself, we can transform the world. Now we're going to hear the voice of two activists and leaders in thought from the 21st century. The voice of Davlin Hill, sharing her own words and the work of Kimberly Crenshaw. These two women's voices intertwined together. Davlin is a friend of this congregation, the executive director of Speaking Down Barriers, and a nationally acclaimed spoken word poet. She's going to introduce us to the Say Her Name project to help us see more clearly and engage with the intersections of sexism and homophobia and racism and the violence that it does to our siblings in this world. Davlin.
Hi, my name is Devlin, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm excited to kind of talk about the intersection of racism and patriarchy and how that affects us as a society, and in particular, how that affects Black women. In particular, it has shown up in violence. And that violence has led to the deaths of many Black women unarmed by police and unarmed through just the violence of hatred that has come with just the exposure to Black trans women and their stories. We just heard about just so much compelling, evidence that there is just a systematic attack on the lives of Black trans women. And so when we think about unarmed Black women, you think, oh, I've heard of, Sandra Bland, and I've heard of Breonna Taylor. So maybe there's not that many, Black women who've been murdered by police or through systematic violence. And so I just wanted us to see just a picture of some of the Black women who've been murdered, unarmed, by the way. And I don't even know why, as a culture, we feel like we have to stress the fact that they were unarmed. They were unarmed. They were unarmed, as if because someone is armed with a hammer or a knife, or it looks like they may be armed, that somehow that makes it okay for people to be murdered. And I just don't agree with that. So as we look at the picture, you see, yeah, okay, I see Breonna Taylor and I see Sandra Bland, but who are these other beautiful Black bodies? And they are Corinne Gaines and Dominique Fells and a whole host of others. And so I wanted to show this picture to just help you see the many lives that we don't see, that aren't highlighted, whose stories and voices are advocated on a small stage. And because of that, the Say Her Name project was started by Kimberly Crenshaw. Now, you might have heard of Kimberly Crenshaw. She developed the term intersectionality, which means or is brought up in a conversation considering all the ways in which people are oppressed because of the many identities they hold. For example, someone who is Black and LGBTQIA like me, will experience different levels of oppression because of the ways those things intersect. Then if you add someone who is living in poverty, or someone who has is differently abled or has significant areas of disability, that's another couple of layers of oppression. And so those things intersect with actual people. And with Kimberly, we started to actually look at those things. She's also the excuse me, co-founder of African American foreign policy or policy, sorry. And she has come up with the Say Her Name project to make sure that the lives of these women are lifted up and that we begin to see and are able to say their names. I was at a webinar where many of the mothers and sisters of some of these women were present, and to hear them talk about just the lack of compassion it seemed like they felt from the society as a whole, and the lack of awareness, the lack of even knowledge, because typically men's lives are valued more. And so even though Black men have experienced extreme violence at the hands of police as well, their lives are, lifted up and we hear about them. Everybody, can name so many more, which is terrible that we have so many names anyway, period. But can name those of Black men because patriarchy still highlights the lives of men. And so I just want you to take a small breath. What I'm going to do is to read the names of Black women who've been murdered by police. And it's a lot of them. And I really want you to continue breathing as you listen to the names being read. And this is a way not only to, bring awareness and to help people realize there's a problem, but also to say that each one of these lives mattered. And it's not necessarily that has to happen, because they mattered whether we see them or not. But when we can do this as a community, as a whole, I think it does something to us, helps us recover our humanity just a little bit more, and helps us recover our dignity a little bit more, because we're able to see that of other people. So just continue to breathe slowly as you're able through your nose and out your mouth. And you might be tempted to look away. You might be tempted to not hear. You might be tempted to think about something else, because it's painful to think about death in this way. But I encourage you to listen and to hear and to think about the lives of these women. Say her name: Priscilla Slater, Breonna Taylor, Atiana Jefferson, Crystal Ragland, Pamela Turner, Nina Adams, Latasha Walton, Brittany McLean, Angel DeCario, April Webster, Tamika Simpson, Lawana Phillips, Dorecia Blackwell, Cynthia Fields, LaShonda Anderson, Shakuri Saeed, Cynthia Clements, Crystalline Barnes, Geraldine Townsend, Sandy Guardiola, India Nelson, Charlena Lyles, Joni Block, Alteria Woods, Morgan Rankins, Deborah Danner, Corinne Gaines, Jessica Williams, Derisha Armstrong, LaRonda Sweat, India Beatty, Keisha Michael, Selah Ridgway, Jenia McMillan, Betty Jones, Barbara Dawson, Markeisha McMillan, India Kager, Rettel Jones, Raynette Turner, Ralkina Jones, Joyce Cornell, Kendra Chapman, Sandra Bland, Nuna LaRoche, Shanique Proctor, Eartha Lilly, Latandra Ellington, Yvette Smith, Michelle Couzeau, Tracy Wade, Ara Wasser, Ariel Levy, Angela Randolph, Dawn Cameron, Shonda Michelson, Kaim Livingston, Renisha McBride, Miriam Carey, Angelique Stiles, Angel Chewingo, Kayla Moore, Amber Carter, Darnisha Harris, Shelley Frey, Melissa Williams, Erica Collins, Alicia Thomas, Chantel Davis, Charmel Edwards, Rakia Boyd, Sharice Francis, Jamila Barnett, unnamed, Katawa Howard, Brenda Williams, Diranisha Clay, Shelley and Cheryl Burton, Carolyn Hernandez, Latrika Sloan, Ayana Stanley Jones, Aja Dixon, Sarah Riggins, Catherine Hysaw, Barbara Stewart, Duana Johnson, Tarika Wilson, Catherine Johnston, Alberta Sproul, Kendra James, Nisa Morris, Latanya Haggerty, Margaret Mitchell, Taisha Miller, Danette Daniels, Frankie Perkins, Sonji Taylor, Eleanor Bumpers. Thank you.
Let's share silence together. We're speaking about the divine feminine this month. Last week we began just by recognizing the expression of the divine in feminine form is an affirmation of the goodness of women's lives, the original blessing of the human feminine. In the earth, in the interconnectedness of all being, in the feminine in our lives, first for those of us who are women, and then for all of us who nonetheless express the feminine in our lives, even though we are not women. There is an original goodness, the glory of the divine. We see that in the faces that Davlin has shared with us. We hear that in their names. Whether we know their names or not, whether we know their faces, they are an original blessing. And we honor that. By honoring it in them, we honor it in ourselves. And by honoring the original blessing, the glory of the divine feminine in us, we take a second step. By honoring and claiming that original blessing, we push back against those forces that do violence. Patriarchy does not define the divine feminine. It is its own expression of divinity. She is her own expression of divinity. But when the divine feminine shines forth in the world, when it burns in the world in glory, it pushes back against those forces of domination and violence that would subdue and silence and erase her. Erase women. Erase that part of all of us. Last week we heard Gail speak about Kuan Yin, Bodhisattva of compassion, goddess of compassion, out of the Buddhist tradition, found throughout the Buddhist world and especially out of China. And if you will go to the order of service that's posted, the link that's posted on the YouTube channel and on our webpage today, you can see the depiction of the goddess of compassion, Kuan Yin, reincarnated again and again in female and male forms to bring mercy and grace to us all. That original blessing of divine goodness embodied and expressed by her. there is also rage. Grace and rage. Rage that would confront and transform those forces of violence that mean to silence and erase. And so, if you look in the order of service, you will see a second image, an image already invoked by Mel today, the Hindu goddess Durga, a warrior goddess who comes to subdue a demon of oppression and violence who no other deities can control, who no one else can defeat. She comes when no one else can, to end the reign of terror, to end the violence, and to restore life, to restore possibility, to restore grace. Grace and rage together. Part of the power of the divine feminine is that she shows up in our lives, not in one form, not in only one way, not in only one truth, but in multivalent ways, in the way that we need her, in the way that we are needed in the world. As we enter into this meditation, I want to encourage you to keep those images before you. Look at them rather than at me. Kuan Yin and Durga, two expressions of the divine feminine out of the South Asian traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. So different in appearance, so different in attributes. But together, the original blessing and the rage to transform violence. Like the gentle waters of the Brunnen, the fords of Brunnen rising up to sweep away the Nazgul. The gentle streams of compassion, the beauty of the world, rising up in a hurricane of force to transform all that would corrupt and destroy and oppress us. Patriarchy is male domination of this world. It is the pretended power of men, born out of insecurity and cowardice and greed, that we have a right to dominate, to direct and govern and choose for everyone. Patriarchy is a lie lived out in culture after culture in our modern world. And it is at the root of so much violence and terror, so much that is wrong with our world. This pretended power of men to be in charge. I think about our own culture, the training that I have as a white man in this culture. Whenever I see a problem, big or small, my immediate response is to try to fix it. That's what I've been trained to do, to take charge and to fix it. But look at our world. Look at the climate crisis that we're in, the ecological destruction that we face, the way that our economic systems have run amok. Look at our weak and struggling forms of governance. Look at the pervasiveness of violence. Look at the poverty with which religion tries to address these issues. If this is the world that men have fixed in our culture, it doesn't speak very well for our actual ability to fix things. It's the fix that we're in. Patriarchy is a pretend and incomplete effort on the part of male dominance to subdue and to control, and it does us all great harm. It does us all great harm. Frederick Douglass identified very early in our nation's history that patriarchy was at the root of enslavement and racism. The effort by men to control government, to control land, to control economic systems, to purport to be able to control other people's lives for their own benefit. And Frederick Douglass spoke out against sexism and against the violence done to women as part of his work to end enslavement in our country. His work of abolition was intertwined with his work for women's rights and women's suffrage. And he was deeply aware of how entwined in patriarchy he himself was, how much damage he did to his own family because of the pressures and stresses and assumed responsibilities that he felt as a man to be in control, to be in charge. A person aware of his own weakness, speaking against the corruptions of our society. In the 20th century, Audre Lorde spoke out against intersectional oppression before it was even called that, naming particularly the way that patriarchy and sexism were at the root of homophobia and heteronormativity and racism all together. She wrote stirringly about the Black liberation movements of the 60s and 70s and the way that patriarchy invaded those movements and undermined them, the way that women were used and abused in those movements for liberation. And she called out the question, how can we possibly achieve the goal of liberation for all when our very means oppress half of us? We cannot use the tools of patriarchy, of male control and domination, of systems that are focused only on money and on power, on singular leadership. That will not help us achieve the goal of interdependence and community and mutual well-being for all. We have to find a different way. And we have heard today Kimberly Crenshaw's work and the work of Davlin Hill, these two brilliant lights of the 21st century. That's not an overstatement. These two brilliant lights of the 21st century, drawing on this centuries-long legacy to name patriarchy at the root of all of these forms of oppression, the ways in which normalizing male leadership creates violence throughout the entire network of being, the whole community of being. They name the way that patriarchy works in two related forms. Outwardly in institutions and structures, outward forms of violence, all that we see around us and experience. Sexual and economic violence, military violence, all of the ways in which male dominance is normalized, as if this is what life should be, when it clearly is not what life needs. And more acutely, more painfully, with more difficulty, naming also the way in which patriarchy lives within each of us, the way we have absorbed that normalized culture, the way we look to men for leadership. And as I say that, I'm very mindful that I'm the one standing here with the microphone in front of you. We're not free of this. It's intentional that you've heard far more women's voices in this service and in all of our services, I hope. But here I stand. We're not free of this. Challenging us to see not just the oppressor without, but the oppressor within, and all the ways in which we express patriarchy in our lives. So I want to ask you to look at that image of Durga again. Go to that order of service and look at this expression of the divine feminine. There are four things that I want you to notice. The first is that she is at the center. Her power is an overwhelming power. It is a force like a hurricane swirling through the static image of the picture. She is the movement, the Shakti, the energy of the cosmos through the feminine divine. She is the transforming, circulating, cycling power. that original blessing in action to transform injustice. We hear it over and over and over again in the stories and the songs in this service. And the question that she poses to us is, can we claim that transformative power in ourselves? That power to transform oppression within and without. The second thing that I want to invite you to see in this image is the demon that she is overcoming. Durga's story is of a goddess summoned to conquer a buffalo demon. Now that may seem strange to us, but this is a foundational story in Hindu mythology, in Hindu religion. There was a demon, an Ashura, who took the form of the buffalo and overwhelmed all of the other gods. He received a boon from Brahma, one of the male gods, who promised him that no male god could ever defeat him, could ever kill him. And in his arrogance, this buffalo demon, this force of patriarchy, believed he would never be vanquished because what woman could ever conquer him? But out of the cosmic energy of the universe, out of her original blessing, out of her divinity, Durga emerged to combat and transform, to conquer the patriarchy expressed in this buffalo demon. The question that we have to ask ourselves when we look at this image is not just, can we summon the power of Durga within us? But also, do we ever buffalo people? Is there a part of us that ever claims to be able to just run the show, to run over people, to bulldoze people, to make decisions on our own, to force our way, to act with greed and selfishness? That is the patriarch that we've all been taught to be. That's the form of leadership that we've been taught is right. To claim dominance over all, and that no one can defeat us. I'm the king of the mountain, and nobody can knock me down. Remember that game? We all played it, teaching us patriarchy. And this image of Durga says, no. No one is allowed to bulldoze everyone else. When we see that form of oppression happening, we see someone bulldozing, we have a responsibility to stand up and say stop. The best we're able to say stop. And the grace of Durga's story is, she says stop, and the demon takes another form. And she says stop again, the demon takes another form. Over and over again, he cycles through, and she constantly stops him until finally the outward expression of the demon is slain. Relentlessly confronting patriarchy until finally it grinds to a halt. No matter how many times it shows up, over and over again. The third step in the painting is to see the demon emerging from within the buffalo. The inner form is far more malicious than the outer form, as terrible as the outer form is. And this is the challenge, to find the patriarch within us. The part of us that has absorbed the image. The part of us that has chosen violence and domination within ourselves. The part of us that lives in self-hatred. Not only men who do abuse and violence to women, but women who do abuse and violence to women. Because that is what was done to them. Because that is what they were taught. Patriarchy is something that we all carry within us, from which none of us are exempt. Just like racism, all of us carry it within us. And so we have a work to do. Not only to stop the outward forms, the bulldozing, the buffaloing, but to stop the inner forms, the inner corruption. And that is the fourth step in the painting. something that we may not be able to see in our eyes. When we think about the Hindu context of this image, we can find, which is that when Durga slays this demon, of course, when she stops him, he will have another chance. He will be reincarnated again. He will have the chance to choose another life, to earn merit in a new life. And so when we confront patriarchy, when we have to fight over and over and over again with all of its iterations that come at us, when we find it again and again in ourselves, those forms of oppression and violence that we've absorbed and that we act out on others, we can constantly uproot it. We always have another chance. We must never give up. Frederick Douglass and Audre Lorde and Kimberly Crenshaw and Davlin Hill and every woman, cis woman and trans woman named by Davlin today, every one of these lives of original blessing summon us to see not just the oppression without, and to constantly step forward to stop it, no matter how many times it shows itself again, no matter how many times it tries to bulldoze us and buffalo us, to step forward and stop it, but to find also within us the way that patriarchy lives. As Frederick Douglass and Audre Lorde and Kimberly Crenshaw and Davlin Hill and all of those cis and trans women also have done. How have we found within ourselves self-hatred and an excuse of violence and domination? To have the courage to slay that again, to let it go again, no matter how many times again, over and over and over again. The grace of being able to do it again and again and again until we are finally free. The warrior goddess Durga, wrestling with the demon, even within us, that we don't want there, and that we know does harm and violence. Wrestling with him again and again and again, no matter how many times he emerges, until with the grace of Kuan Yin, we are all free.
My place is of the sun and this place is of the dark. I do not feel the romance, I cannot catch the spark. My place is of the sun and this place is of the dark. I do not feel the romance, I cannot catch the spark. I don't know when I noticed life was life at my expense. The words of my heart lined up like prisoners on a fence. The dreams came in like needy children tugging at my sleeve. I said I have no way of feeding you, so leave. But there was a time I asked my father for $1, and he gave it a $10 raise. And when I Someone's on the telephone, desperate in his pain. Someone's on the bathroom floor, doing her cocaine. Someone's got his finger on the button in some room. No one can convince me we aren't gluttons for our doom. But I tried to make this place my place. I asked for Providence to smile upon me with her sweet face. But I'll tell you, my place is of the sun and this place is of the dark. And I do not feel the romance, I cannot catch the spark. By grace my side is growing stronger, and I will not be a pawn for the Prince of Darkness any longer. Maybe there's no haven in this world for tender age. My heart beat like the wings of wild birds in a cage. My greatest hope, my greatest cause to grieve, and my heart flew from its cage, and it bled upon my sleeve. Oh, the cries of passion were like wounds that needed healing. I couldn't hear them for the thunder. I was half the naked distance between hell and heaven's ceiling, and he almost pulled me under. Now someone's on the telephone, desperate in his pain. Someone's on the bathroom floor, doing her cocaine. Someone's got his finger on a button in some room. No one can convince me we aren't gluttons for our doom. But I tried to make this place my place. I asked for Providence to smile upon me with her sweet face. But I'll tell you, my place is of the sun and this place is of the dark. And I do not feel the romance, I do not catch the spark. My place is of the sun and this place is of the dark. I do not feel the romance, I do not catch the spark. By grace my side is getting stronger, and I will not be a pawn for the Prince of Darkness any longer.
Our final reading comes from the Reverend Dr. Jann Aldredge-Clanton. The inclusion of female divine names and images in worship and ministry empowers our work of peace and justice in the world by helping to break down patriarchal structures that keep so many people in poverty and oppression. Inclusive language and imagery support gender justice that intersects with racial and other justice concerns.
The violence of patriarchy is real everywhere and in our lives. And so is our ability to stop it every time it shows up, over and over and over again. The violence of patriarchy is real, and so is our ability to stop it. And so is the grace to finally be free.
We have spent